So Mark Hamill just revealed that when he played Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi, he had to create a whole new backstory for Luke, and it's far more darker than you could ever imagine. Now, we all remember Luke Skywalker as the hero of the rebellion, and the one that believed there was still good in Darth Vader when no one else did. But in The Last Jedi, we meet a different man. He's broken, filled with regret, and convinced the Jedi legacy should die with him. And over the years, this has caused a ton of controversy in the fandom. But recently, Hamill shed some light on why Luke's portrayal in The Last Jedi never sat right with him. So much so that it forced Hamill to create an entire new backstory for Luke, just so it would all make sense to him. Now, Luke's retreat in The Last Jedi is caused by a moment of fear, when in a split second he senses darkness in Ben Solo, which caused him to instinctively light his lightsaber. Now, that moment was designed by Rian Johnson to challenge the idea of the perfect hero. But as Mark Hamill has said in interviews in the past, that Luke did not align with the Luke he had played during the original trilogy. And over the years, we have seen him try to be supportive of the film's vision, but it was clear he had his doubts, and it often seemed like he was trying to convince himself as much as he was trying to convince us. Well, it seems like Mark Hamill has officially put the debate of his true feelings in regards to Luke's portrayal in The Last Jedi to rest. Because as I said earlier, in a recent interview, Hamill revealed that he disagreed with Luke's descent and exile so much so that he even had to invent his own personal backstory to understand why Luke would isolate himself. And here's a warning, it's incredibly dark.
I said, Ryan, I saw entire planets wiped out. If anything, Luke doubles down and it hardens his resolve in the face of adversity. So that's all. I said, can I make up my own backstory of why he is the way he is? I don't want to just say that, I have bumped my head and I have brain damage. He said, yeah, do whatever you want. So I made up a much, much darker backstory that I thought could justify him being that way. You want to hear what it was?
Spill it, Hamill.
I thought, what could make someone give up a devotion to what is basically a religious entity, to give up being a Jedi? Well, the love of a woman. So he falls in love with a woman. He gives up being a Jedi. They have a child together. At some point, the child, as a toddler, picks up an unattended lightsaber, pushes the button, and is killed instantly. The wife is so full of grief, she kills herself. I thought that would be, because I think about, I hear these horrible stories about these children that find unattended guns and so forth and wind up dead. And I thought that resonated with me so deeply that that could possibly, but he didn't have the time to tell a backstory like that, I'm guessing. He just wanted a brief thing to explain it. And to me, it didn't justify it. That said, and I told him this, despite the fact that I disagree with your choices for Luke, I'm going to do everything within my power to make your screenplay work as best that I can.
Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with Hamill in regards to Luke needing a more tragic event happening in his past to justify the Luke we see in The Last Jedi. But to me, this is incredibly interesting, and I 100% agree with Mark that there needs to be another major tragedy in Luke's life, maybe just prior to The Force Awakens or further down the timeline in Luke's past, to justify him throwing away everything and just abandoning everybody he loves. It really is too much of a drastic change for us to see Luke go from the Luke in Return of the Jedi, saving Darth Vader because he is the only one in the galaxy to believe that there is still good in Anakin Skywalker's heart, then to go to the Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi that has given up hope and exiled himself because he gave into a momentary impulse. I think one of the biggest flaws of The Last Jedi, and often something forgotten, is that Luke has more in common with his mother Padmé, more so than he does with his father Anakin. And I think this is because we see Luke and his father interact so much in the original trilogy. But Padmé believed in negotiation, diplomacy, and measured responses, even in the face of war, which Luke parallels especially by the time of Return of the Jedi. Luke chooses calm over conflict. He surrenders to Vader not to fight, but to redeem. And like Padmé, he believes in the good within others, even when logic says otherwise. And this is really demonstrated by how Luke echoes Padmé's "there is still good in him" by Luke saying, "I feel the good in you" to Vader. Now, in one of my first videos, I said Luke's fall needed something personal, not just losing his students or a temple, but something closer to his heart. And of course, I know losing Ben Solo and betraying Han and Leia and seeing his life's work, the Jedi Temple, being destroyed, would definitely be devastating. But as Mark mentions, the Luke from the original trilogy would just continue on against all odds. That's who Luke is. And we have to remember his mentors and role models were Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda, Jedi Masters who lost everything, their order, their friends, the Republic, everything they knew, but they never gave up on the future. They believed in Luke. And I completely agree with what Mark said. The reasoning behind Luke being in his depression and exile in The Last Jedi should be caused by him losing his wife and child. Now, I completely disagree with Mark's headcanon with how it should happen, because to me it seems way too dark for Star Wars, even with him trying to create the parallels with the real world. Instead, what I think needs to happen is that Luke's wife should be the same in canon as it was in Legends, and that being Mara Jade. And I think this may come true because there's been a lot of Mara Jade mentions in the rumor mill recently. And just like in Legends, I think Mara Jade needs to die by the hands of her nephew, that being Kylo Ren. And instead of Luke's child dying, I think they need to be taken and hidden, but in a manner that would convince Luke that his child is dead. I think this would give Luke adequate motivation for his depression, and one that the audience can understand as well. But not only that, as a studio or a creator, you would also be able to set yourself up for future storylines. Now, I don't necessarily know if this storyline would actually happen, but Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau have said that they are using the timeline after Return of the Jedi to connect the two trilogies together. Yeah, let me know in the comments, do you think Luke's fall needed something more, or was The Last Jedi enough? And if you like this video, give it a like, it really helps out the channel, and if you want more Star Wars content, subscribe to the channel. Thanks again for watching, and may the Force be with you.